this is the effect we're looking for. It's water, transparent. You can see what's underneath. There are these lines here are on the bottom of the pool, and this line is on the side of the pool. And then, of course, you can see trees in the sky and other things reflected in the water. And so what we want is that effect. How we get well, we'll start with the simple part and then work up to the more complicated stuff at the end. So the simple part is when you get done creating an EV, if you want reflections, you get done creating a plane that's reflective, make sure you add a reflection plane to the object. So you size this reflection plane about the size of the object, the width and height, and then you put it about halfway in between the two. Play with the parameters until it looks good. I actually don't understand the parameters very much myself, so I just tweaked them until they looked good. Now let's look at the actual water itself. The water itself is just a simple plane, except I subdivided it, and I subdivided it a lot of times. So when you first subdivide it, you're going to have a bunch of little squares, and they're all very evenly set up. You're going to want to make sure and get those squares in a not even fashion. Otherwise, these ripples that you're going to add a little later on, you'll have aliasing effects, and the ripples will look really weird and really messed up. So we want the ripples to look good, so you've got to make sure to get rid of the grittiness of your plane that's subdivided. So the way I did that was I would select a single square, and then I would turn on proportional editing, and then rotate on the z-axis only. So if you rotate on x or y-axis, then you're going to get some sort of you're going to get a twisting that you may not want. The only thing you're doing at first when you're rotating on the z-axis is trying to get rid of the grid and make it more wavy, but only wavy on the z dimension. If you look at it from the side, it's still perfectly flat. And you can see it's not perfectly flat here, but we'll talk about that next. So you're grabbing these squares, rotating them on the z-axis. That's all well and good until if you try to avoid getting close to the edge because you don't want the edge to do this weird thing here, then you'll end up with the edges being too regular. So at the edges, instead of rotating on the z-axis, you either grab it on the y-axis like this to kind of squeeze things one direction or another, or if you're on one of these other edges, then you move it on the x-axis. So you end up trying to break up any of those straight lines anywhere on the surface of the water. Then when you do that, that gives you that helps you with the ripples, I should say. So that's all that does. The other thing you want to then do is add turbulence to the water. And the way I do that is I selected everything. Then I did select, we want to select random, and then you choose, instead of action select, you choose deselect, and you bring this up to something like, I don't know, like 95%. So you only just have a few squares selected here on the water. At that point, you do proportional editing, but choose random for what you want to proportionally edit. Once you do that, then you grab on the z-axis these things, and what's going to happen is as you move these up, they're going to add some turbulence, and then all around it is going to have some turbulence added too. So you move this up, but you only move up the tiniest bit. We're talking like just maybe a 0.5% of the size of the pool, right? And then once you get done moving it up, you move it right back down to where it was. Keep on that proportional randomness, random proportional editing, and then when you move it back down, it'll randomize it even more. You'll probably find out when you do that that the water is too choppy, and let me give you a view of what that looks like. If I move this up and then I'm like, okay, show me the water, it's like, wow, that's crazy, that's hot tub, right? So if it's too choppy, then what you do is you highlight everything and smooth it, either smooth it or size it down, scale it down on the z-axis. Either way gives you that effect. So this is just this part of the pool. I'm going to go away from the ripples, right? So now what we've talked about gives you everything you've done here. So also when you broke up all your lines earlier by rotating on the z-axis and moving on the x and y-axis and everything, when you move some of those squares up and down, you'll notice that the bumps and everything will kind of follow these nice waves on the surface of the water, and that's just following the lines that I've created by doing my rotations and movements. And so that is actually somewhat pleasing just all by itself. So then the question is, how do we do ripples? Ripples are an interesting thing. You can just model them in, that's fine, but I have these two empties that if I move them around, you can see the ripples move around as well, right? And I can change, let's do this on the medium. I can change how much these ripples are affected by moving these empties up. And so here you can see we just have barely any ripple, and as we come down you get more and more ripples. And also I suppose you could animate this to make it look like actual ripples. You'll notice the ripples kind of fade out at the edge of their influence. There's a very small amount of ripple, and then right in the middle there's a lot, and we'll talk about how we do both of those things. So they are achieved with a warp modifier. So if I highlight the water itself, go to my modifiers, you'll see I have a ripples 1 and a ripples 2 set of modifiers, and these are both the warp modifier. Blender's not giving me it's not telling me that, but this is a warp modifier. So the warp modifier, you choose a from and a to object. And so what I've chosen for from and to is two empties. They're these axis empties. Let's pick this one right here. And that's where the, I guess, vertexes go from, and to is where the vertexes go to. And so all we're doing is basically moving the vertexes from one to the other. And then when I'm doing it, I'm doing it with this curve, this fall-off type of curve, right? And so I've defined a curve where on the left side the bumps are very small. So this is the outside of the ripples, and then as they get closer and closer to the right, they get taller and taller, and that's the inside of the ripples. Now it doesn't matter too much how tall or short you make these lines here. I've made them largely, more or less, all the way to the top on the right side, and then all the way to the bottom on the left side. And so the reason it's not terribly important is if you take these two empties that you have that are from and to, and you put them close together, then the ripples are very small no matter how big you defined it. And if you move them far apart, the ripples get very, very deep no matter, again, how you defined it. So the final thing I've done is I have these two empties. I've just parented them to this third empty. Now this empty I can just scale, and because when I scale it, then the two other empties, move apart or together depending on how I've scaled it, or I can move it around, and like that defines like how far or where the ripples are. And if I move it up and down, the further away you move these empties from the pool, the less influence also those ripples have, and also they project out a bit. So as you pull it up, then the ripples look like they're going in, and you can just barely see them here, and then as you move it closer, then they get stronger and stronger. If you pass through the plane, it just does it in opposite. So you can also put these empties below the plane if you want. I just like them above the plane, first of all, so I can see them, and second of all, it just feels more of a natural place for me to put them. So one other trick that might not be obvious, I have these ripples having two different, let's pull it up here, two different sets of wave patterns. So you can see one is got, I don't know, looks like about 10 or 12 waves, and this one looks like it has maybe 16 or 18 waves. So it's a different number of waves, but also the radius of one is 3 meters, the other is 2.5 meters. So you want to do that to break it up a little bit. That way you can put these ripples kind of close together, and you can get some nice what would you call it, interference pattern effects on the two waves, or you might think of them as moire patterns, but it's just interference between waves of different cycles, right? So it gives it a really nice look. And so then I can take both of these at the same time, do things like rotate them or grab them on the not z-axis, move them around, and be like, okay, I want them over here. And then I can scale them down on their z-axis to kind of make the ripples less apparent, and or more to make them more apparent. Or I guess if I really want to, I can make them super wavy, right? So that looks like a bit too much to me, but it could be an effect you're looking for if something just splashed into the pool, for example. And these are all the things I can think of. I guess it's probably important to say what my water shader is. So let's take a look at that. We've backed all the way out. Anyway, let's put that in there. Let's click it. All right, so this is the water. I've got the SSGI, EV SSGI plugin going. So you'll notice my shader is called SSGI Principle. The The plugin you can get for free. You should probably pay for it, but the guy will let you have it for free if you ask nicely on Gumroad. And all it does is it creates these special EV shader nodes. That said, it's exactly like a principled shader node, except for this emission strength thing here. So you can pretty much copy these parameters as is. Very metallic, very not rough. Sheen doesn't matter, I'm not doing anything with it. Clear coat, not doing anything with the clear coat either. And so the base color I get from a vertex color, and so you can see I've kind of painted this. There's a little bit of lighter up here, a little bit more blue here. It's just to add a little bit of, I don't know, color abnormalities to the water, which I think makes it look a little better. It's a very subtle effect. You can just pick a single color if you want. The other thing is, so I'm doing mostly, mostly this glass BSDF. It's only partly that SSGI, or excuse me, partly that principled node, right? So, oh no, actually, sorry, factor 0.8. It's mostly the principled node, but there's a little bit of this glass BSDF, right? So again, I plug the vertex color into there to get that glass shader to be the same. The purpose of the glass shader is just so that I get my, I'll get some actual index of refraction anyway, get that effect on there, which I kind of like. And I think that is it. Yes, that should be it. So I will cut this here tutorial short. Hopefully you figured out how to do some swimming pool water. If you're doing an indoor pool, you can do a lot less of that turbulence. You'll still want to move the, you'll still want to rotate the vertexes on that z-axis, and break up the lines of it so that so the ripples will not have aliasing effects, but also that if you do add a little turbulence, it'll do it in a nice wavy fashion. But then indoor pools are probably going to have less of that, less of this bit that comes from wind blowing over the pool over here. So that should do it. Actually, I did keep on my pool the shape key for the not turbulent bit. So this is where the z-axis has been scaled down to 0, so you get perfectly clear reflections, and it's very easy to see what's going on with these ripple effects here. But because it's an outdoor pool, I much prefer the look of this with the wind on the water. All right, thanks guys, have a good one.